You've been on the show before. You launched Workday Ventures,
Exactly.
and have spent the last 18 months or so putting this new fund together.
Correct.
Automation for the real world, what does that mean?
That means focusing on companies that are helping the largest sectors of the economy, like construction, real estate, or waste management, adapt to automation. The way we like to think about it is companies that are solving problems for the 99%, and that think more about the problem they are solving than about the technology first.
So what are 1% problems that you think too many investors are focused on?
You know, we think that the next deep neural network is super exciting for the 1%, and particularly for those of us that are nerds, but it's unlikely to have an immediate effect in something like waste management. So we are actually focused on the other 99% that think of things like, where do you find a home? Or how do you get rid of your trash? Or like, how do you have better crops? And we think that there is not enough focus on Silicon Valley on those problems, and there was no fund that had an exclusive focus on that.
You've been raising money for the last 12 months. What was the reception like?
It was very good. So we are extremely happy and proud of the LPs that have supported us. I think that a lot of them describe our focus on real economy versus AI like a breath of fresh air in a world that is all the time talking about the machines are coming, are taking everyone's jobs, and we are actually like, no, automation could be a good thing if we invest in the kind of companies that believe that we should all benefit from it rather than 1%.
So, you make a point to point out that this is the first fund, largest fund of its kind led by a black investor. Why do you think that's important?
It's interesting. For me, it has been a journey realizing that that is important, because where I grew up, and I'm half Nigerian, half Spanish, because I grew up in southern Spain, I was the only black kid around. And that made me don't have a racial identity. What is interesting about the US, and I have found over the last decade, is that the US gives you a racial identity, whether you want it or not. And we are in a place where historically people have been treated differently because they look differently, and that has resulted in issues like the ones you have been talking about in lack of diversity in tech. I realized that that put me in a unique position, and I realized that it's important to move that conversation forward. So
is it something that you now play up? So many women investors have told me, well, I don't want to be the woman investor. I just want to be a good investor.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. When we were fundraising, it was not until we had 95% of the fund completed, like about 120 million, that one investor told us, hey, have you thought about talking to investors that have a diversity focus? And we're like, oh yeah, I realized that might be a competitive advantage for us, but we didn't. And part of that is, because we're very prideful about the fact that, I'm black and I'm here and I'm investing in other people like me, but it doesn't need to be our main focus, because what we believe is that if you invest in people that are solving problems for the 99%, you're going to end up with a pretty diverse bunch, because those are the kind of folks that are actually going to internalize those problems and work on them. Now,
you have a fascinating background, because not only did you immigrate from Spain, but you founded a rival to Uber in Latin America called Cabify.
So I was the founding investor of Cabify. I did it with a couple of classmates of mine from Stanford. It's a fantastic company. Juan, my friend and CEO, is definitely giving Uber a run for its money in Latin America and Spain. And I think part of what has made Cabify very successful is the focus on regional communities, where the drivers have true pride of what Cabify does for the community, for the region, and for their families, and that deep understanding of the problem you are actually solving and the people you are serving has been a huge differentiator for the company over the last 7 years.
We've seen Uber sell its businesses in other global regions where it wasn't able to compete, whether it's China or Southeast Asia. We also just reported on a story about Uber in talks to buy its Middle East competitor, Careem. How do you expect Uber versus others' state of play to evolve in Latin America?
Yeah, I'm not in the day-to-day of Cabify, so that will be more for Juan to speculate. What I can say is that the numbers of the company and in general, the excitement on the company just goes up month by month. So it is definitely a very important region, I think, for anyone. But Cabify feels very good of the position where it is.